Kylie.
All right, we are live on all our social media. Can you start by telling us your name?
My name is Brianna King.
And how many children have you got?
I have 2 children.
And they're sitting right here on the floor. Can I show them?
Yes.
Here they are. They're absolutely gorgeous. And here's another playing with Will Chollock's toys. Thank you, Will. All right, so this is kind of topical for the time that we're in right now. Do you want to just tell us in your own story, go back to the beginning and tell us what happened? Or do you want me to ask you questions? How are you doing with this? Because this is your story. You've got a lot of notes in front of you.
Feel free to.
Okay, so let's go back and talk about, are these children vaccinated? Before this court thing, were they vaccinated?
No.
So did you have a husband or a partner at the time, yes?
Yes.
And had you both decided together as a team that you were not going to vaccinate your children?
Yes, and in December of 2015, just a couple weeks before I filed for divorce in January of 2016, we sat down. It was right before Christmas, and he reiterated that we were going to continue the religious exemption for our children.
So you were both on a religious exemption with your children because you truly believed that vaccinating was not the right thing. You had both discussed that together.
Yes.
So what happened that you ended up in court with these children mandated for vaccines? What on earth happened?
He chose to turn against that, and because our children had not been in any kind of preschool program, they did not have a physically written exemption, because that's almost the only time that you need it is to turn it into the school. And so because there wasn't any physical document saying that we were in agreement, he went against that.
Why would he change his mind? I don't understand how a father of these 2 children can see how well they're developing, and suddenly, did you guys have a messy divorce? Was this a revenge thing?
He was sexually abusive and had started becoming physically abusive
to you
at the end of 2015. Yes. And so he has used the court to continue that abuse. And
so he knew this was the one thing that you did not want. This is the biggest way he could get to you, was to have
one of the biggest ways. Yes.
Come on, Super.
I just can't understand how anyone would use their children.
I don't either.
So tell me what happened. Did you have a discussion? When did it first come up that he was going to? You 2 noisies, listen up.
Right. The first time that it came up was when his attorney had sent over and had filed some motions with the court to have hearings on the issue of vaccination, along with some other issues. And
right, hold exactly where you are. Kids, Kiddywinks, let's try all these. Come with me. This is going to be for you. Look at this. This is fun. You can have all of this. Come with me. Come with me. Up over here. Look back here. There's a mountain here. This is a big mountain with all the toys. Woohoo! You can make a big den and play and have fun and
be quiet.
All right, let's see if that works. Okay, play on the mountain.
So the first time that the issue of vaccination came up was when his attorney filed a motion with the court and it was around April of 2016, so this was 3 months after I had filed for divorce, and they wanted to have a hearing on that issue among other issues, and my attorney suggested doing an agreed order, and we managed to keep the issue of vaccinations out of it and simply say that, both parents had joint medical decision making and decision making on everything else. It came up again in July when they sent over another agreed order to because they had filed more motions with the court, and I specifically emailed my attorney in July of 2016 and said, get anything about vaccinations out. And in that agreed order, they had used the term immunization. And I specifically stated in this email to my former attorney that I knew that those terms were legally interchangeable in Tennessee. And we talked on the phone a couple times, and she was trying to talk me into keeping it in there and just, you know, doing a delayed schedule or something like that. And I said, you know, I finally said no, like, get it out. And I want to see the version of the agreed order that has been revised before it is submitted to the court. And she did not have that happen. And there was an agreed order submitted on the 18th of August 2016 that stated the children would be immunized.
With what?
I didn't say with what. It just said they would be immunized.
Oh my God, you must have been like a knife to your heart.
Yes. And I did not even see that agreed order the way that it had been signed by the judge until November of 2016, by which point I had we had a hearing before a magistrate on the issue of parental rights being taken away
From you?
from me.
Because of this vaccine issue?
Yes. And so in September of 2016, we had a hearing before the magistrate, and I have since learned that it should have been before a judge because parental rights issues are such a major issue. It's not a minor issue, and magistrates are only supposed to hear minor issues, whereas because it was a parental rights issue, it should have been before a judge, and it wasn't. So the magistrate recommended that my parenting rights be taken away and that my parenting time be dropped down to 20%.
So your ex is going to have the children and you get 20%.
He became primary parent.
Oh, that'd be petrifying.
And I had been a stay-at-home parent for 4 years at that point.
And this is purely
Almost 5
because
years.
of the vaccine issue? No
I
matter,
believe so.
and no matter what he did or why you were divorcing him,
Yes.
he now gets 80%
And-
of the parental rights of your children.
And just to go back, I had turned in a religious exemption statement on August 15th of 2016, so our son could start kindergarten readiness in the public school system. So I had signed and had notarized a statement under penalty of perjury that I had religious beliefs against vaccination. And the court ignored that and looking at other cases in the state of Tennessee, it is very frustrating that while our legislature is encouraging religious rights, the courts are blatantly going against religious rights, especially in the case of vaccinations.
So what happened?
So my now ex-husband was given full parental rights, which includes medical, religious, education, and extracurricular. And so he began having our children forcibly vaccinated in November of 2016.
Have you seen the medical records? Do you know what your children have had?
Yes. So the first ones that they received were the DTaP and the Hep A and varicella. So that was some of the
In
first
one
ones
go?
that in one day. And then my son had a excessive swelling after a round of vaccines. I believe it was his third round of vaccines by February of 2016, at which time he received all of these vaccines.
So on
He
the
received a
1st of Feb,
DTaP.
1st of Feb this year,
This was
DTaP.
February 1st. He received this.
Oh my
This.
goodness.
Good. You can do whatever you want. Yeah.
I'm going to pull.
And your ex took him for this.
It was either their father or sometimes their paternal grandparents were taking them.
Too. I can fight the world too.
So this was
Can you bite? Yeah.
my son's
Can you bite?
legs after
me just
the
try.
vaccines in February.
All of them. Can you bite?
Just swelling at the side. Yeah, just put it on, show these people. Can we show them?
And then this is the measurements on it. It was over 100 millimeters in width and length on both legs. And it was still swollen and hard and hot a week later when I got him back for parenting time again.
And at this point, are you able to speak to your ex about, look what's happened to our kids?
No.
Children? No, he doesn't care.
And we even went to trial in March, and I even took my child to the emergency room when
Your son we're talking about now.
I took him to the emergency room, and so it was marked as local injection site reaction
Wait a minute, where does it say that?
right here.
Local.
I'll pull you away. Yeah.
Okay.
And the bill that I received in the mail from the doctor who saw him was $802, and it says
So you had to pay for the.
it says injury evaluation. Yeah.
What about your daughter? What vaccines does she have?
I don't know how many vaccines my kids have received at this point. I believe that my son has received 3 rounds of DTaP, MMR, at least one of varicella, at least one of polio, along with boosters for all of those.
And what's the situation now?
So my
Because they're with you
son-
now. So is this your 20% time?
Yes.
Do
I
they
will
know
have
you're
them.
going live on social media right now?
No,
And you don't care?
I don't care
Because
because I believe that
Caitlin has one of these.
it's important for me to speak out against the
I'm gonna throw you away.
corruption within the court system and the importance of religious rights.
do you see a change in your children from these vaccines? I mean, thank
Absolutely.
God you do. Okay, tell us about
Absolutely.
that.
So they, the first time they went in for vaccines, their father was there, and I have recording of them as well as pictures, and they were screaming no at the top of their lungs, and the screams that they had afterwards were, I mean, I've never heard anything like it.
There's a big bubble.
And
Check it in.
that was in November of 2016. And they received another round of vaccines
I'm the biggest. I got a
About a
big
month
laser
later.
guy. Destroy.
in December of 2016. And I have voice recording from that as well. And at that one, their father was not present.
You have voice recording because you were there, or someone sent it?
I was there.
And they're screaming.
Yes. It was like their souls were being ripped out.
Oh, yeah.
It's awful.
And I ended up
Oh, yeah.
requesting
Oh, yeah.
that a letter be sent over
He's okay. I'm glad they're happy.
Yeah, they are. Oh, well, I don't know where it is. So their father was not there, but their paternal grandparents were, and they, I requested that a letter be sent from their father saying that it was okay for the grandparents to be bringing them for the doctor's appointment because they had no legal guardianship rights. And so he ended up having to write a letter while he was at work and fax it over. So I have a copy of that. And at that appointment, my children were pinned down by their pediatrician as well as their paternal grandmother, and while a nurse forcibly vaccinated them, and they were screaming and fighting to get out.
So they're suffering trauma, would you say?
Absolutely. They have absolutely had PTSD symptoms. And their personalities have completely changed from what they were. My daughter used to be very outgoing and, you know, would run up to complete strangers and say hi, and now she is extremely clingy and shy. And my son used to be quiet and reserved, and he is still that way to some extent, but he'll have these spurts where he talks a bunch. And this is a child who had already had a lot of issues that were, you know, I'm not exactly sure what was going on. I suspect that both of my kids have MTHFR mutations. And so, you know, he had a lot of behavioral issues already. And we had been doing weekly chiropractic with cranial adjustments, and that had helped tremendously because he hadn't even been speaking at the age of 3 years old. He didn't start speaking in sentences until after we started him with a chiropractor doing cranial adjustments and, you know, making massive dietary changes, cutting gluten out of his diet, cutting dairy out. And so the fact that the court has ignored stuff like allergy testing and, you know, just what was their norm for their medical care, and has completely gone against the norm for my children, which isn't what the court is supposed to do. Just because vaccination is normal for the mainstream doesn't mean it was the norm for my children, and the court should not have completely turned my children's worlds upside down.
So someone's just asked about, because they spend, you know, 80% of their time with their father. Does he feed them the way you want? Are they looked after the way you want? What's the deal there outside of the vaccine issue?
Right now, I am actually suspecting that my son is anemic because he isn't getting enough nutrients when he's with his father, and just the way that he looks right now is suggestive of that. And honestly, like, he's being fed processed cereals that have folic acid in them, and, you know, I'm vegan, and both of my children are very passionate about having a plant-based diet and treating animals with respect. And my son came back yesterday and said, I'm always hungry when I'm over there because I don't want to eat any animal products, and they're not feeding me enough vegan foods. So I highly suspect that we're dealing with, you know, nutritional deficiencies as a result.
Do you have anything that shows the court mandated these vaccines?
I don't right now. It is in my car.
Okay, it's pouring with rain outside. So the big question is, what is your advice to people are about to, they're in love, like you were, you get married and all that kind of stuff, and then it's too many times that we hear this. Your story is not unique by any
absolutely
stretch of the imagination.
And I wish that I could say that, if I had a religious exemption that had both of our names on it, that it all would have been okay. But I've seen cases where that was in place, where both parents had signed a religious exemption, and the court still will turn around and say, oh, the father changed his mind. We're going to give him all the rights because he wants to vaccinate now.
The courts are on the side of the people who want to vaccinate pigs. I think everybody knows
Absolutely.
that. Large pharmaceutical backhanders going on, we're pretty sure there.
I believe the most important thing that we can do right now is to vote individuals into office that will stand up for religious rights. I believe that it is important to be working with our state legislatures to expand the protection of religious exemptions so that we are not having these cases over and over and over again throughout the states, and that the court does not have the power to take away parental rights just based on this issue.
The problem that we're seeing is that you've got politicians, even presidents, that promise the world when it comes to vaccines, and they get into office, and before long Merck and the Gates Foundation and various others get to them.
Absolutely.
So we have big problems in all governments with this. So I think the main advice has got to be careful who you have babies with. I mean, I don't know, people change, but really and truly you need to have signed vaccine. I still think the courts will take you over that.
I believe if you are engaged and you are remotely considering not vaccinating your children, you need to be signing a prenuptial agreement saying that you intend to exercise a religious exemption. Or, as one of my friends has suggested, don't sign the state marriage license language and just write your own up and submit it to the local county office. Because we don't have to sign the nice, perfect language that the state has decided to come up with when it comes to the marriage license. We can write whatever the heck we want and submit it.
So just to be clear,
and they have to honor it.
Just to be clear here, before your children were not vaccinated and they were extremely healthy, they've now been vaccinated by order of court.
Yes.
And are not as healthy mentally or physically as they were before.
Absolutely. They had gotten sick maybe a handful of times before they were vaccinated, and they have had sinus infections, chest infections. My son is actually sick right now and has been for at least a week with congestion in his chest, nasal congestion, and so that is going on about every 4 to 6 weeks that they're getting sick with something. My son has also had, after being vaccinated, he has had massive inflammation in his body, and it surfaces as rashes coming out on his skin in patches, which for me, I know that's the body going into a hyper response to external organisms, and just the inflammation and the body being skyrocketed for weeks afterwards. And while I've done everything that I can to detox my children as fast as possible, it isn't enough ever.
How are you going to get more than 20% custody of your kids back? What's the deal here? How can we sort this out? This is not okay.
So I have appealed my case in the appeals court, and I am representing myself. I have taken the LSAT, and I'm currently waiting on my scores. And I will be starting law school next August in Nashville.
Is there anything else you want to add to this or show us with the papers you've got in front of us? This is a horrific story, but really and truly, you've got to get your kids to sign vaccine agreements, or you've got to be on board with each other, because we just film so many stories like this.
Absolutely. And I think a large part of it too is just being aware of who your elected officials are. In October of 2016, I ended up taking a course by the Center for Self-Governance, which educates individuals on our government and how to get involved and be the active citizens that we are supposed to be in our country. And it was very beneficial, and I think that it's given me a lot of insight into where I need to take my fight. My fight isn't with the court at this time, it is with the legislature. It is with getting laws changed in Tennessee and encouraging others to get their laws changed in their states. That's what it comes down to. We are the people, and the people have to speak and get the laws changed.
I'm so sorry that you've been through this. It's like a horror story, and you can hear those children hacking away with their great coughs. But you're great kids.
Yes, they are very anti-vaccine.
I just feel so bad for them, because you know, it's really not okay that these children are pulled.
Yes.
It's extremely disturbing for them, and
Absolutely.
they're used as bait in a divorce is disgraceful.
Absolutely.
And the court mandating vaccines, and you both made that decision not to vaccinate for good reason. And I'm just so sorry. You have to stop this before the Gardasil HPV, the flu vaccine. They cannot have this stuff.
Absolutely. I'm hoping that I can get some sort of reversal before my daughter has to receive kindergarten boosters, which would be in August of next year.
All right, well, listen, thank you so much. And if there's anything we can do to help, please keep in contact with us. And do you know these people outside? They're great.
Yes.
Yeah, keep in contact with them. They'll keep in contact with us too.
Yes.
And these people here are 100% behind you, and we're just truly, truly sorry. And you've got anything else you want to add?
Yes.
No, okay, you're a great mum, and